freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 286 of Gun Freedom Radio, where we engage, we educate, and we inform. We are brought to you by azfirearms.com, your nationwide hometown gun shop. I am one of your hosts, Cheryl Todd.
And I'm the other guy, Dan Todd. Our theme today is CombatQuilter. And our guest is Andrew Lee. Andrew is an award-winning quilter and combat veteran known as CombatQuilter. He is a 3-time combat veteran with 19 years of combined military service, currently serving in the Tennessee National Guard. Andrew's many convoys, missions, and events while deployed to Iraq have resulted in him having PTSD. After trying many coping unhealthy mechanisms that just let him emotionally detached and unsatisfied in life, a random comment about taking a couples quilting class by his wife, Kristy, changed his life forever.
Absolutely. And Andrew is also our brother-in-law because Kristy is my sister. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thank you.
This is so exciting for us, for me. I have a few of your quilts, and I should have probably brought one into the studio and shown it off because they are absolutely my favorite.
Well, she keeps them behind lock and key. That's why you can't.
Actually, do I, Andrew, or did you make me promise to use them?
I made you promise to use them. That's what quilts are made for.
That is true. I was very tempted to keep him under lock and key, and he put his foot down and said, I won't even sell it to you unless you promise to use it. So we did kind of, tip the hand a little bit about how you got started in quilting, but I want to hear you tell your story to our audience. How do you, and thank you for your service. I should have said that right up front. That is, a sacrifice that we haven't personally made in our life. And so we extra value people who have put themselves in those situations and in harm's way on our behalf, on behalf of a nation that maybe should be a little more grateful than that we are sometimes. But how do you combine that military service? And then you were a truck driver for quite a while. And, now you're the combat quilter. How do those worlds merge?
It's actually a crazy journey. Kristy had said at one point that we didn't do enough together. And of course, my response was, we visit your parents, we go out to dinner, we go to breweries, we go to historical events. What more do you want to do together? I love you, but I'm not working for you or with you. That's just too much time together. You're bossy enough at home. I don't need to listen to it at work too. And she had made the comment that she just didn't know what more we could do together, but just felt that we weren't doing enough. And I was like, look, we do yard work and we're remodeling a house. So she left it alone. And a couple of days later, I had beat her home from work, and in the mailbox was a quilted table runner class from Joanne Fabrics for $30. And I thought, here's a perfect opportunity for me to make 3 women happy for $30. It's like unheard of. So I made the table runner for my mom. She made it for her mom. We did it together. I'm a hero all the way around. And what I didn't anticipate was becoming hooked on the therapeutic value of the mindlessness that sewing provided, but yet gave me purpose in doing something. And I had something that I physically could put my hands on when I was done that provided something else. So not only was it therapeutic for me, but it also gave light to someone else, and in the form of a table runner at that time. And then of course we went back to Joann's to buy fabric. I mean, if I made a table runner, I could make a quilt. So as we're there, we met the husband and wife team that are the leaders of the Quilts of Valor group in North Knoxville. And he invited me to a men's group that was only men can come. And 3 of the 6 of us were veterans. So yes, they were Vietnam vets, a little bit older, but we still all have that same, military bond and the same purpose. And they gave light to Quilts of Valor and how Quilts of Valor embraces and awards a quilt to a veteran in hopes that it would provide some warmth and comfort when battling their demons, whatever those may be, because of the 22 a day and trying to cure that, quilt can make a difference.
Absolutely. And what a neat thing. And I don't think that enough people even realize that there is such a program as the QOV, the Quilts of Valor. And the problem with PTSD, I think, is that it gets used against our veterans and people that have suffered and faced trauma in their life so often. And it seems like the only prescription anybody can ever think of is, well, here's some drugs, here's some pills, here's some pharmaceutical um, way to just kind of mask what's going on. And then, you bring that into the Second Amendment advocacy world. And so they're trying to use PTSD and people who have experienced trauma to try to infringe on people's rights through things like red flag gun laws and things of that nature. And then here you are, and here's this group of men working together that you're saying, look, here's a skill and a hobby and a creative outlet that is effectively apparently, because you are very well adjusted, right, after all this all these 19 years of combined military service, here's this method of moving through that and coping with it. What do you have to say about that, and what is it about quilting that does seem to release tension, or what's at play there?
Well, I feel that initially people don't understand that before you deploy and go overseas, you train and train and train and train and train, and they teach you to shut that light switch of emotions off. And then you've done it so many times, it's so hard to turn back on. I used to watch the show where they hit the golden buzzer and stuff falls from the sky. And that would be the only time that I actually felt real emotion until I started quilting and awarded my first Quilts of Valor to a World War II veteran. And during that event, he said, "I don't deserve this." And I said, "Mr. Carpenter," I said, "you walked into Normandy. It's not like you jumped in or rode a tank. You walked." And then as the conversation progressed, his son proceeded to tell me, after the 15-minute conversation that him and I had, he learned more about what his dad did during the war in those 15 minutes than he has his whole 40 years of his life. And that emotional attachment is what got me hooked initially, is the opportunity to give back, not trying to negate the therapeutic value that it was giving to me, but I was afforded the opportunity to share something, to give someone else a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, that yes, we care. I'm here for you. Yes, I understand that you're a manly man and may not like hugs and wouldn't admit, a quilt unless it came from another veteran, but it makes a difference. And I feel that the therapeutic value that I wrapped up in 100,000 hours of video games, and I have nothing to show for it. Yes, I was the World of Warcraft 2 versus 2, grand champion for 3 years in a row. But what does that mean on the outside? Versus in that same amount of time, I probably could have made 200 quilts, which could have saved up to 200 people's lives to not become a statistic, if you will.
It's amazing. So
So,
what do you think about, Andrew, when you're quilting? Or what's on your mind?
Danny, I hate to admit that nothing. And that's the part that it allows me to escape all of those things in my brain that I have seen or done, that not that I'm not proud of or whatever, but they are, in the limelight of what war really looks like. The patrols and the convoys between Kuwait City and Baghdad, and the things that we've seen, and the people and the way they deal with war, and I just feel that the PTSD is part of that thing, that in Vietnam they called it something else, and yet it was the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I
And
look at, I did not go through nearly half what you've gone through, but, I have stuff in my closet and some problems. And when I'm working on guns, I think of nothing but working on a gun.
Mhm.
So I totally understand what you're saying, but yours is a much more higher degree than mine. So I'm really glad that you found something that just clears your mind, because that's what heals, is clearing your mind from this stuff.
Absolutely. Giving
yeah,
your
and it's an
brain some
escape.
breathing space.
Yeah.
I really hate to say that it's an escape, but it really is. It gives me an opportunity to escape those, and because quilting is so uh, therapeutic, but in the same sense, it's mindless. It's a quarter of an inch seam over and over and over again. You're doing the same stitch, and because of that repetition, type A OCD people like me find an escape in counting stitches and all of that as well. But in the end, there's a Kentucky National Guard captain who's doing a study on TBI, traumatic brain injury, and PTSD, that proves that anyone who has a hobby that creates something with their hands, woodworking, painting, gardening, something that you can physically produce at the end, those folks have a 60% chance greater of surviving life as a whole than those who don't. So can you imagine what it would add to someone who has issues and stuff going on in their head that they're trying to overcome?
Right. Because if you're not doing anything, your mind's on what you've done in your past.
Mm,
Right.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I alluded briefly that, you were a truck driver for a while. And so I used to look, because your screen name used to tie that in, I think. You, before you were the combat quilter, there was, I think you tied in the trucking. So talk to us about how one can drive a truck across the nation and still quilt and create these amazing works of art.
Well, I'm fortunate enough that the FMCSA and the Department of Transportation has created these wonderful laws that says I can only work a 14-hour day, and then I must take 10 hours of rest. And because I am military, I am only required to have 6 or 7 hours of sleep. So what do I do for those other 2 or 3 hours? Yes, the driving wide open spaces away from people was a great escape and allowed me to see beautiful countryside. However, I still had that yearning for something more, which is why during my off time, I would sew for an hour, hour and a half once I got stopped and parked somewhere, and allowed me to have a scenic backdrop of wherever I stopped. So from Utah to um, Southern Florida, I mean, whatever my front windshield was my backdrop of where I was sewing at.
And so I mean, you're in the cab of a big rig. How do you have like a quilting studio in the cab of a big rig?
Well, I did have a full-size ironing board that would fit between the seats, and I rigged up an 18-inch TV tray to put my sewing machine on. But once I crawled in the seat, I had to make it efficient so I didn't have to get up and turn to iron or get more pieces. So I maximized the space, and I feel that a lot of quilters are always trying to get a bigger, better space, when in fact what it boils down to is I was looking for the only space that I had. I didn't need some big, huge quilting studio, because the therapeutic value that quilting was giving me, I needed to get somehow. Whatever means necessary is what I did.
Absolutely love that, because I'm hearing people out there that are like, well, I kind of like to quilt, but, and you're just kind of ticking off all of the excuses that they could have. Like, well, I'm a guy. Oh, so what, right?
I'm a truck
So
driver.
so I'm a truck driver. Well, so what, and quilting supplies can be pricey, and especially if you decide you're going to be a long arm is that the right phraseology for that? That kind
Yes,
of
that is
puts that
correct.
finishing touch design over the whole finished quilt. And you have found ways through all of those obstacles. As a matter of fact, there's someone out there that you call your fairy godmother, having to do with some of that. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. I originally had made a quilt in hopes that I could sell the quilt and the proceeds would go towards purchasing a long arm that I had wanted. I spoke at the Tennessee Valley Quilters Association's yearly meeting, and in that, a woman, after I spoke, asked what my plans were, and I said, I'm going to try to beg, borrow, steal. Okay, maybe not steal, but sell my quilt so that I can obtain a long arm. Because that's what I felt was lacking in the Quilts of Valor world was if I had a computerized long arm, I could efficiently complete more quilts in a shorter amount of time. And of course, this woman stood up at the end of the briefing and said that she'd like to give me $50 to go towards my long arm. And then other folks stood up as well and said they wanted to give me money. And without missing a beat, the spokesperson, Miss Judith Thompson, stood up and said, don't worry about it, and dumped a box of coffee filters like truck stop coffee filters and coffee and stuff out, dumped it right on the floor and said, we'll pass this box around. You ladies can fill it with pennies. That'd be cute. And that was the beginning of it. Well, Kristy and I went back to the quilt shop and decided to count the money. And in the box was a business card that said, I would like to make up the difference for whatever you need to get the long arm.
Wow.
And I really hate to say that for 30 minutes I sat and cried trying to see how someone could take that much care in the grand scheme of helping somebody else out that they didn't know. And when I called her and talked to her on the phone, she said that, I said that she asked me what long arm I wanted. I said, ma'am, I can't fully expect you to spend $45,000 on a long arm for a guy you don't even know. And her response was, just so you know, I've been following you for a little while, and I feel that this would be my only way to give back, knowing the differences that you could make in someone else's life.
Wow.
And I had to let her go and told her I would call her back in a couple of days. And I once
Just
again,
too much, right?
it was just too much. I mean, my emotional light switch had been shut off for so long that how can I process this in my head and understand it and wrap my head around it and not feel like I'm overwhelmed, which I was. So I now have a Gamel Statler long arm in my living room, my second living room, and I long arm as many Quilts of Valor as I can.
Awesome. That's great. So all these years you've been doing this now, what is your favorite quilt that you made?
My favorite quilt as of today is my Iwo Jima quilt, because I feel that it allows folks to see the therapeutic value that quilting has. So many people have come to the quilt show, either in Houston or at Smoky Mountain, and have commented how they came just to see a quilt that a veteran had made, 75% in his semi truck that is 110 inches high and 110 inches wide.
And that was, I mean, really I was glad that we could bring that full circle, because here's this massive quilt that you made. I think really a one of a kind, you created the pattern, right?
Correct.
And you started it in the cab of a big rig. It's incredible to me, and I wish that I'd prepped you to bring a picture to hold up, because I know you've done tons of interviews and probably magazines and on and on. Do you have one with you? Maybe on the phone?
I, I, I'm hoping that my phone will allow me to find a good picture of it.
I do have it posted on your guest page. So when people, want to check back later, if we can't get a clear shot of it here on video, and of course, people that are listening audio only, just get to imagine. So it's oh, beautiful.
Oh,
Yes. And look how tall you are
oh my gosh.
compared to the quilt. It is absolutely stunning.
Wow.
Andrew, I can't wait to see that thing in real life. Where is it? Is it housed somewhere where people can visit it all the time?
It is currently hanging in the International Quilt Museum, and it's in the vault currently. They have they've done an outstanding job with trying to figure out a way to preserve people's quilts that they have added to their collection. I mean, it's 6 stories below ground and has every air filter and filtration system known to man. And I believe it can survive a nuclear blast and still be okay from the stuff that I've understood about it. And they
That
will be displaying it during certain times. I believe the 4th of July or Veterans Day of this year. I know COVID has changed a lot of the capabilities of the museum and the things that they could do based on the restrictions.
So
it's incredible.
if somebody wanted a quilt made, a special quilt as a memory, something like that, can you help them with that?
Well, there's so many quilt guilds out there in the community that could aid and assist with memory quilts. I unfortunately am booked until at least June with the quilts that I'm currently working on. I'm working on a 9/11, the flag raising at 9/11 quilt as well, and that one will be 22,400 pieces and be 11 and a half feet high and 8.5 feet wide. And I feel that there are many wonderful quilters out there that could aid someone in their community that's part of a guild that's all they specifically do is memory quilts and t-shirt quilts and all of that. We all have our niches of things that we're good at and like to do, and it all depends on the person and what they enjoy doing, and are good at.
Absolutely. So, I mean, truly, the Iwo Jima quilt is, I mean, priceless has to be the price. Like, and I know you're not selling it, but you know, that thing is huge. There are so many hours involved in it. Like, what, how could you possibly put a value on that?
Well, I took it to an appraiser and had Cindy appraise it for the value of what it would cost to replace the quilt. And it's right around $8,000 just to replace it. And I have over 30 yards of fabric at $11.99 a yard. And then I have about 400 hours into it. You know, with the increase of what labor costs are now, I attempted to pay myself $10 an hour for this if I would sell it, but with the minimum wage possibly going up and all these other dynamics of me working full time while I was doing it. So I really didn't need to pay myself. But there's such a misunderstanding about what the value of something is. I mean, it's only worth what somebody's willing to pay.
Yes.
And
Right.
and the crazy part about that dynamic is I feel that quilting was a lost art for a while, because back in the early 1900s, it was solely for warmth. It had nothing to do with aesthetically pleasing art. And now, as times have moved forward, it is provided not only for those people who originally had made quilts, but now for the artists to be involved in that as well. So two worlds have merged together to still continue to produce something that people use and need every day.
So the long arm machine, does it take the quality away that somebody does by hand, or does it add to it?
that depends on the person who's wanting the quilt and what you're wanting on it. I feel for efficiency and time, the long arm machine, hands down, is the way to go. But the value of hand quilters is 100 times what I can do. You know, just the time, you know, back in the early 1900s, women would allow that frame to be hung on the ceiling in the living room, and they would lower it, and 4 or 6, 8 women would all get together and they would all hand sew. The time that they spend, I mean, it's 8 times what I can do on a hand quilted. But the long arm machine will do designs that are more accurate because it's basically a CNC machine hooked to a sewing machine.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it? Is it like embroidery on the pattern on the cloth, or what does it do?
It sandwiches the 3 layers of quilts together. So in a quilt, the top layer is the top, and then you have the backing fabric, and then you have some sort of meat in the middle, which is normally a batting. 100% cotton, you know, 80% cotton, 20% polyester. There's several wonderful products out there. I'm a huge fan of Warm and Natural, which is 100% cotton, and I really like the way that it fluffs up and really makes you want to get underneath the quilt and cuddle it like it's supposed to be.
Absolutely.
But
Well, I
this
can
machine sandwiches those and puts a stitching design in it. And it can be something as simple as wavy lines and something as extensive as dog tags and stars.
Wow, it's
absolutely.
amazing.
And I can attest to that. You know, we have quilts that are just random from wherever. And I think that they might have a higher level of polyester in them than the ones that I've bought from you, because it just, the cotton just breathes, you know, it keeps you warm, but you don't feel like you're smothering under there. So very, especially here in Arizona, we have like 10 chilly days all year. So, and I want to use that quilt every day if I can while I'm watching
I like
TV,
that.
reading.
I like the commercial made quilts because I don't have to wash my feet before I use it, like you make me on his.
Oh yeah, he doesn't even get to use mine. I don't even know what you're talking about right now, Mr. Todd. So we touched earlier on the fact that you've made many Quilts of Valor. I don't remember if you said how many that you've awarded.
I have awarded 74 Quilts of Valor in 4 years,
Wow.
just
Dang.
over 4 years.
Do
October
you
was 4
sleep?
years. So I'm 4
So you're
years
probably
and
making a
4
quilt
5
right
months.
now while we're talking, aren't you?
I
Or at least you got a
wish that
plan
I
for
had that
one.
kind of, what's that, Danny?
Or at least you have a plan for one. You're planning
Yes,
for one.
it's, as I'm sitting here looking at you, I have a bookshelf quilt on my list of things to do, and looking at your wonderful backdrop, I'm like, oh, that's what I need to focus on. You know, thin ones and thick ones, and figure out some way to incorporate the statue that you all have of Abe Lincoln. That I plan on making an Abe Lincoln quilt, but now I want to incorporate it in my bookshelf quilt.
That is a beautiful statue up there. That's a Yadro, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it is. And that's one of the cool things about the first quilt I bought from you is that, you know, you really incorporated special things for me. You have the Abe Lincoln, you have the flag, and it's just subtly patriotic, but you've got those squares kind of here and there. And then you even put polka dots in it. I mean, shut up.
Well, the quilt pattern that I used was airmail, and it's a simple 9 patch with a block around it. But I just felt that if I am going to make a quilt for a special person, I really want them to be able to link my attention to detail for your passion of having a quilt and something you can cuddle underneath of and drink your coffee and read a book, which is what I feel that quilting is all about, is helping you enjoy the things that you do just as I do.
Absolutely. So, what is your most memorable Quilt of Valor of the 74 that you've awarded? Was it the one that you mentioned earlier, the first one, or was there some other story that just really takes the cake?
No, it was the first one. Mr. Carpenter at the time was 93, a
Oh,
World War
wow.
II vet, um, and was in communications and walked into Normandy. That's so hard for me to fathom in all of my years of service that someone would walk as far as they did for such an event. I mean, at 19 years old, how do you say that you walked 80 miles in 6 days? I mean, I just can't fathom that. And the comforts that we now have as soldiers, you know, boots and equipment and gear, they didn't have all that luxury. So for him to, one, be open to receiving a quilt after some coaxing, of course, you know, it was an honor for me to try to find a way to give back to him. I mean, he curved and carved our national history way before I could ever dream about what it was like to be a manly man and a soldier.
Yeah.
That is just incredible. And, when you talk about, he walked into Normandy, it's not like, he already knew when I get to Normandy, it's not going to be any picnic. It's going to be rough. There's going to be really bad things waiting for us there. And I just, with each step, he had to have found that courage to just keep going, him and all of his troop mates. And again, I go back to that, a nation that sometimes is not quite grateful enough for people who have put themselves in those positions. And earlier you said, you were so taken aback by the lady who wanted to buy you that long arm. And you're like, how can a person do something so grand for someone they don't even know? Well, I think that kind of sums up the mind and the heart of a service person. Is that true?
No, I completely agree. And her husband was a veteran, and I think that played a part in it as well. But still, to this day, I still think of the raw, pure emotion that event gave me, which has continued in the limelight of me making more Quilts of Valor, trying to cover as many veterans as I possibly can.
So amazing. So awesome. So what are your future plans for quilting?
At some point, not at some point, here in the very near future, I plan on making pantographs, those designs that long armors use in the sandwiching of a quilt, to be a little bit more manly than the 90% of designs that are out there that are more feminine. Yes, I understand more quilters are feminine, but it's not like women are the only ones who receive and like quilts. So I feel that if I could help, curb some of that to be, boot prints or grenades or pinup girls or whatever I choose, so that way others can do that. And then eventually I would like to open a retreat center for quilters. And then one weekend a month, we're hoping to utilize it for veteran therapy. Be a free weekend, let veterans come and I don't know, the camaraderie that veterans have and the healing process and just attempt to show some other means that people can utilize to escape what they've seen or done or gone through, that is in a positive light, not in a negative, like the majority of what people think that we do, drink and party and tear up the town and all of that, when in fact the majority of us would rather have a little bit of peace and quiet and a nice cup of coffee.
That is so awesome. And this is the first time I've heard you say that about a retreat center, but I love that idea. And I want to talk about it more with you, like as it moves from, is it just a dream right now, or is it a plan? Where
Oh
is
no,
it
it's
in
a
that
plan.
process?
It's in my 10-year plan for sure, and could be in my 5-year plan if my pantograph stuff develops as much as I would like it to be. There's 217,000 quilters in the United States. If I could appeal to 1,000 of those and produce 60 pantographs, I mean, that's $900,000, which would give me well enough to do what I'm hoping to do. Just because I feel that my fairy godmother invested in me early on, and it's now time for me to continue to give back. And I feel this is the one way that I could help that.
I love that so much. And that brings me back to, when you make these quilts of valor, they're a they're a donated thing. How is it the long arming that helps, keep the bills paid and keep money coming into the process?
Yes, I long arm for hire, to the 4 local quilt guilds or folks, you know, who pay to have their quilt sandwiched. And then I try to do my goal this year is to do 1 Quilts of Valor a week. Last year I did 68 Quilts of Valor that I quilted. So I'm trying to spend a little bit more of my time in the pantograph stuff and not in the long arming of Quilts of Valor, knowing that my time is better spent in the pantographs to help my end goal that hopefully would affect more veterans than I could by just doing 1 Quilts of Valor in that time.
Absolutely. And then, of course, your wife, Kristy, who was kind of the impetus of so much of this, she also quilts and makes and sells things on your, is it the Etsy site?
Correct. We use Etsy, and she's doing quite well with the masks and bags, purses, aprons, things of that nature.
Absolutely. And every once in a while, one of you will, put up on social media that, okay, here's a quilt or whatnot that we're selling. And I'm usually like right in there, like, me, I want it.
Well, I want a pinup quilt.
I know. How cool would that be? I love that idea.
Yeah.
So look, hopefully,
Danny,
give you some.
I'm booked till June, but after June, I'll consider it. You'll have it for the fall next year.
All right.
I love it. I love it. That is awesome. Well, Andrew, how can people continue learning about, all that you bring to the table and follow your journey with your Quilts of Valor and maybe even, buy a thing or two that you, on in your spare time you make to sell?
Sure. I am on Facebook as CombatQuilter. I'm also on Instagram as CombatQuilter. And my wife and I share an Etsy account as Particular Pair. And I will include the link so that way people can see the spelling. Particular as in a close group of defined things, and then pair as in to cut, not as in 2 of us.
Absolutely. PARE. Well, this was really wonderful and awesome. And I so appreciate you taking all this time because you could have made like 9 quilts in the 30 or so minutes that we were talking.
I don't
But
think he could have made 9.
not 9. How
No.
many you think?
Probably 1.
No, more than that. All right, Andrew, we so appreciate you. We so value you.
You so appreciate.
Oh, I see. I see what he did there. He's here all week.
Well played, sir.
Tip your wait staff. Andrew Lee, the Combat Quilter, thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good talking to you, Andrew. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You too, sir.
I do not love him.
Mhm.
I mean, he is awesome.
It's amazing that, everybody thinks shove pills down their throat.
Mhm.
Everything, the cure for everything is to just give you medication.
Mhm.
And for him to break away from that and, find something that, hobby that would soothe you. And
not just him, but then there's that outreach and that
Right.
continuation of a servant's heart that he's, giving to other.
Oh, it's awesome. When you give
veterans.
something that you made to somebody else and they appreciate it, there's nothing that feels better than that.
Absolutely.
And the time and stuff that he puts into that. And it's just amazing to me. I mean, it just is. It's great.
It is. And there's I don't know if it's a hashtag that he uses, but I think it is. It's Men Who Quilt and hashtag QOV and hashtag Quilts of Valor. Really, kind of shows you how not uncommon this really is. And yet I had never heard of any of it until Andrew came into the family and, we started, knowing each other through Facebook because I had not met him in person we had not met him in person until on one of his trucking routes came through Phoenix, maybe 2 years or so ago. And then we had a chance to, spend some time together and get to know each other.
Very warm, nice guy.
Absolutely. And so I was just originally I was like, men who quilt, that sounds funny, because
Why does it sound funny?
because I was uneducated,
You know,
because I didn't know.
30 years
And so then
ago,
I was like, oh no, wait, that's for real. And look at how talented he is, and look at all the lives that he's touching through it. And
it is different. It is different. But I mean, think about this. There's so many things that's changing now. A woman walking into a gun store 20 years ago. There's
true.
another one.
That's
So
true.
there is a lot. And
Women
you
who
know,
shoot. Wait,
and the
what?
thing is,
Women
no, wait.
don't shoot. Well, I
The
guess
thing,
we do.
the thing about that is that we need to understand is that by opening the door to everybody with everything,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm sure that, I mean, there's some good quilters out there that are guys, and there's some good gun representatives, for safe.
Yeah. I was very sexist. Shame on me. I'm over it now, though.
I'm glad you're over
Because
it now.
I want to encourage
Cooking. I mean,
Oh,
30, 40 years ago, a man cooking. Oh my
yes, but
God.
look at all the famous chefs.
Right.
They're all men.
Because-
so then how does that get confused?
Because people have abilities that they don't show unless you let them show it.
That's true. All right.
So, but that is weird because I was thinking, okay, so you're at a truck stop, you got your ironing board and your sewing machine outside, and how people would think that was strange. But it's not, because I mean, there's people that collect stamps, there's people that collect coins, there's people that do that. And the fact is that it calms you. Whatever you do, if it calms you, it's good.
It's true. And there's men named Danny Ray Todd who collect not only, machine
Machine guns.
guns, but also Tinkerbell memorabilia.
Oh, I love Tinkerbell stuff.
So, but she's kind of like a pinup,
She is a
so
pinup.
that does make sense.
But some people think I'm weird. Well, I am, but actually I think I am weird. There's no doubt about it.
That's true.
But
take it from me.
we need to stop with this, that's a guy thing. This is a girl thing.
Yeah. No,
because
absolutely.
people have abilities that, and it helps.
I agree with you. I was just outing myself
know.
and my previously sexist way of thinking.
Well, I used to think about the gun shop. When a woman walking in a gun shop, she's picking a gun up for her husband or ammo.
Not the AZ Firearms.
No,
gun
no,
shop,
no,
but
way
the one
back.
you had way back.
Way
in the
back before I had any
70s.
brains.
When you had any brains. Well, we call that era BC.
Yes,
before
Cheryl.
Cheryl.
She taught me right.
Suddenly, when the Cheryl era came in, I mean, you just got
door got
way
open.
Yeah, way smarter.
Yeah, I got so smart. About ready to pass
man.
you in smartness.
I think you have done that in spades, sir. You definitely are
anyway.
smarter than I am.
Andrew, it was great to have
I have to
him
say
here.
that because we're recording.
Let's thank Andrew for being here today.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Thank you so much to our amazing listeners who are all over the world.
And you never know what we're going to talk about next, do you?
You don't. And I think
But that all ties up with what we do. It's about people and their rights. And, so you just never know. And, he was in the service for 19 years service. And
he looks too young for that, by the way.
I know he does.
But, and he is currently serving, as we said, in the Tennessee National Guard. So, that too is like, okay, so he's quilting. And then he's got to be, take it away from it.
Fighting, quilting, protecting.
Yeah, protecting.
Quilting.
But thank you to our listeners all over the world. I just feel in my bones that there are people out there that are going to be inspired by Andrew's story. And whether they step up and they help maybe donate to Quilts of Valor to help more quilts get made, because it's not cheap. It really isn't. Fabric is not inexpensive. No. Or inspired to explore that hobby that just has been kind of like sitting there and mulling around in their mind. It doesn't even have to be quilting, whatever it is, that maybe they can be inspired that, Andrew was able to really move forward in his life and get out of a stuck place in his life by, not having those sexist, bigoted, thoughts in his mind, like, well, I'm a guy, I'm not going to a quilting class. What's that about? Right.
Well, I think
he just was like, yeah, hey, this is a win-win. I'm going to make my mom happy, my mother-in-law happy, and my wife happy.
Yeah.
And then turns out he found his life's calling. It's just, so I think there are people out there that are going to be inspired by that.
Right. And I'm hoping that people that are listening today or viewing the show realize that there are other things besides medications to help with these things. And if you know, we all know if we get ourselves involved in something, that our mind goes away from the bad things, you know, and we need to do that, because then when the bad things come back into our mind, we have ways to cope with them better, because it's not just that. It's not
Right.
just a fight. It's, you know, you get away from it, you can learn to deal with it better. So
Absolutely. And you know that a diagnosis is not who you are. It's
no,
not like, okay, so therefore that's the end of the story. Um,
it's a healing process. Just like if you got in a car accident and you know, you messed your leg up, you have to learn to walk again.
mhm,
And it's the same thing, even though a person can't see what another person has. It's just, it takes a while to build it back up.
absolutely. So thank you to everyone. And if you have missed any portion of today's show, or if you just want to go back and review or watch or listen for the first time, if you are a video watcher, you can find us on the Ops Lens smartphone app. You can find us on YouTube until they decide that they don't like what we're talking about anymore, and then they censor us off. But so far, so good. We're still there. Or Gunstreamer, which is a Second Amendment friendly version of a YouTube type platform. And we trend there a lot. So I really like Gunstreamer. We have a lot of great followers over there, and always room for more, right? And if you liked listening to the audio only version, what do they do, Dan? Go to gunfreedomradio.com, click the on demand tab, and
Binge listens to your heart's content,
there
darling.
you go. You remember that part.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out, are we going to sing Now's the Time to Say Goodbye
To
to
all
all
our
our
company.
company? The old folks remember that, right?
Yeah, that's the Mickey Mouse Club,
Yes, it is.
right? All right. And until next time, pray for our nation. Pray for all of our veterans.
Oh, yes. Yes, we
Pray
need to pray
for
for them.
all of the families of people who are currently serving and have served. It is a whole family unit,
Why don't we just pray
honestly.
for everyone and everything except that one guy? That one
Well,
guy. And you
okay.
make that one guy whatever you want it to be.
Okay, but that's the one that we have to pray maybe especially for.
Well, if somebody else will pray for him.
No,
No,
no, it's
no,
all
I
of
agree.
us.
We need to pray for everybody, guys. I mean, we're in a battle right now.
Yeah, can you say battle, or does that put us on a list because we incited violence?
We're at a time of misdirection right now.
We really are. It's nuts out there, and you know we really have to
Wait,
focus on the people in our inner
speaking
circle.
of,
So, and if we're all focusing on people in our inner circle, that's just gonna, grow exponentially.
we just got back from a rally. We
Mhm,
had the Second Amendment rally here in Arizona.
mhm.
Beautiful weather, beautiful day, beautiful people. We had, now, one of the news articles said that they had dozens. Was it dozens, or did they say
So last year they said dozens
this year? What did
of
they say?
people that showed up, and there was 3,500 people. And this year, uh, one of the K-Jazz stations here in Arizona actually, said, well, hundreds,
Hundreds, right.
like they
Well,
probably broke a nail trying, hundreds.
100. We had over, I estimate 4,000, but they're saying between 3,500 and 4,000 people. I say 4,000, and I would say out of that, probably at least 3,000 of those were armed,
Mhm.
responsible citizens.
Mhm.
We had one guy that was there that with the Confederate flag, and he was a super racist man, and he was
Like
all
admitted, like
he
he
was
said it out
all
loud.
by himself. Nobody paid any attention to him. So all he did is stand there for 5 hours and got no response, no nothing. But the Second Amendment people that feel that we all have rights to say whatever we need to say,
Mhm.
left him alone
Mhm.
and let him have his day. But it was great because everybody just was the most friendly people and most responsible. It was just awesome. And these people had loaded firearms, AR-15s and handguns and everything else,
Mhm.
shotguns. We saw a guy with a musket there,
Mhm.
and it was just a blessed day.
It was a perfect day. We call it our Celebrate and Protect the Second Amendment rally. We partner up with Writers USA to put that on each year. And it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And it really is like a family friendly festival. And, of course, there's always that one person who's trying to pull attention away or paint us badly. And that guy with the rebel flag, he, from the stage, our speakers said, you're free like we are to say whatever you want to say, but we disavow what you are standing there trying to represent. And that he was asked personally, face to face, are you like trying to express racism? And he said yes. So, but then I looked at his outfit in a photo I saw. Of course, the newspaper loves to take photos of people like that to try to make the rest of us look bad. And I am telling you, his outfit looked like a Halloween costume to me.
Mhm.
I mean, he looked like he was dressing for a part rather than somebody who
Right.
was truly, just a citizen, and this is how I look and this is what I do. So I
But we
kind of
had,
smell a rat
Right,
there, but
I smell a rat too, and I agree with you after looking at that situation. But we had every type of race there, multiple,
absolutely
and
huge diversity.
everybody,
Every It's a
everybody,
slice of Americana.
right, and everybody let him be.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. They were like, whatevs, you do you over there. We're doing us over here.
Right.
So it was wonderful. And I was very proud of the event and already excited about planning for next year. We had 20 plus speakers, we had 70 vendors.
And we're trying to shoot the 105 next year.
No, we're not going
Yes,
to
they
shoot
no,
the
they said, no,
105.
wait, we really were talking to Writers USA,
Yeah.
and they're going to try to get a permit so that we're allowed to shoot that for the opening of the
Oh,
celebration.
like a demonstration. Okay. Yeah, we have to say that. It's like movie magic. So it's
Yeah.
a big boom, no projectile.
No, we're just
So.
going to shoot the to start the presentation.
Okay, I'm on the same page now. All right, we got to get out of here. Thank you again, everybody. Have a great week. Be good to each other. And
God bless.
God bless.
Bye-bye.